We remember the past, we don't remember the future. We have a different kind of awareness about what might happen than we have of what most likely has happened. The past and future look completely different psychologically and so forth. And the questions of memory, of apparent freedom of will, in the sense that we feel that we can do something to affect the future, but none of us, or very few of us, believe that there's anything you can do to affect the past. And remorse and regret and hope and so forth are all words which distinguish perfectly obviously the past and the future. Now, if the world of nature is made of atoms, and we too are made of atoms that obey physical laws, there's obvious distinction between what happened, the past and the future, and this obvious irreversibility of all phenomena.
In 1961, Richard Feynman proved something that broke physics. He proved that particles don't exist in one place until you look at them. Before observation, they exist everywhere and nowhere, in a cloud of probability. The moment you observe, the moment you measure, reality collapses into a single outcome, which means reality is not solid, it's not fixed, it's responsive. And here's the terrifying part. Your observation creates the past, not just the present. Feynman and Wheeler proved this with the delayed choice experiment. The past is not set. It changes based on what you observe now. When Feynman started teaching people this, when he started explaining that observation rewrites history, institutions got nervous. Because a person who understands this can't be manipulated by regret, guilt, or shame. Those require a fixed past, and the past is not fixed. Let me say that again because I need you to really hear this. The past is not fixed. And I know, that sounds impossible. I know your brain is already rejecting it. Because we've been taught our entire lives that the past is done. It's over. It's behind us. It's written in stone. But quantum mechanics, the most tested, most verified scientific theory we have, says that's completely wrong. And Richard Feynman spent 40 years proving it. Not to confuse you, not to play mind games, but to free you. Because once you understand what he understood, everything changes. Your regret loses its power. Your anxiety about the future dissolves. Your fear of time running out completely evaporates. And that version of you, the calm, sovereign, unchained version, is dangerous to a system built on keeping you in urgency, keeping you in fear, keeping you rushing toward imaginary deadlines while drowning in unchangeable regrets. You live in a quantum universe. Every atom in your body, every electron, every proton, every piece of matter that makes up what you call you, obeys quantum laws. And quantum laws say something absolutely revolutionary, something that changes everything about how you understand reality. They say that you exist in multiple states simultaneously, until observation collapses you into one. Let me break that down, because this is where it gets beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Richard Feynman proved this. He won the Nobel Prize for it. His equations, his mathematics, his experiments, all of it points to the same conclusion. Reality is not what you think it is. And I'm not talking philosophically. I'm talking measurably, experimentally, repeatably in laboratories around the world. If reality is probability until observation, then three things become undeniably true. First, your past is not fixed. The delayed choice experiment proves that observation in the present changes what happened in the past. Second, your future is not predetermined. Particles take every possible path. You are living all possible timelines until you observe one. Third, you are not one person. You are a probability cloud that collapses into you every time you make a choice, every time you observe yourself, every time you pay attention to who you think you are. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds insane. This sounds like science fiction. This sounds like some mystical, spiritual concept dressed up in scientific language, but it's not. This is mainstream physics. This is what they teach at MIT, at Caltech, at Princeton. The difference is they teach it as abstract mathematics. They keep it in equations and formulas and academic papers. They don't connect it to your life. They don't tell you what it means for your regret, your anxiety, your fear, your sense of being trapped in time. And it's not an accident. Most people think reality is solid. Objects exist whether you look at them or not. The chair is there even when you leave the room. The past is behind you, permanent and unchangeable. The future is ahead of you, approaching like a train on a track. Quantum mechanics destroys all of that. And Feynman spent 40 years proving that reality is observer-dependent, responsive, malleable. When you understand that, when you really internalize it, 3 things happen in your life that change everything. First, regret disappears. Because the past you regret is not the only past that exists. In the quantum foam, in the probability field, there's a version where you made the other choice. Both are real. You're just observing this one. Second, anxiety dissolves. Because the future you're worried about is one possibility in an infinite field of possibilities. It's not coming for you like a predetermined fate. It's waiting for you to observe it into existence. And third, control vanishes. Because you realize you're not a victim of time. You're a participant in collapsing probability into reality. You're not watching the movie of your life. You're rendering it frame by frame with your attention, with your observation, with your consciousness. Now, let me tell you about the science they buried. Feynman's most famous idea, the one that won him the Nobel Prize, is called the path integral formulation. And it says something that should fundamentally change how you see your life. It says a particle doesn't take one path from point A to point B. It takes every path, all at once. Think about that for a second. A photon traveling from the sun to your eye doesn't take the straight path. It doesn't take the curved path. It takes every possible path simultaneously. Past, future. Sideways through time, backward, forward, through the moon, through your body, through dimensions we can't even perceive. Every single route, all of them happening at the same time. The particle is not a particle. It's a wave of probability exploring every option in the universe. And only when you observe it, only when you measure where it is, does it collapse into one path. Only then does it become real in the way you understand reality. Now apply that to your life. Just for a moment. Let this sink in. You made a choice 5 years ago. You took this job instead of that one. You moved to this city instead of staying where you were. You said yes to this relationship or no to that one. Standard thinking, the way we've all been taught to think, says you're on one path now. One timeline, one reality. The other paths, the other choices, those are hypothetical. They're imaginary. They're what-ifs that exist only in your head as fantasy or regret. But Feynman's mathematics says no. That's not how reality works. All paths are real. You're experiencing all of them in superposition. You only perceive one because your brain, your consciousness, your observation, collapses the wave function. Every single time you look at your life. Every time you think about who you are, what you've done, where you're going, you're collapsing infinite possibilities into one experienced reality. This is not metaphor. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is quantum mechanics applied to macroscopic reality. And John Wheeler, Feynman's mentor, the man who taught him, who shaped his thinking, took it even further. Wheeler said, "The universe is a participatory system. The observer and the observed are one. You're not watching reality from the outside. You're not a camera recording events. You're creating reality frame by frame, observation by observation, choice by choice." And when you really understand that, when you let that penetrate not just your intellect but your body, your nervous system, your sense of who you are, everything changes. You stop being a victim. You stop feeling helpless. You stop living in fear of a future that hasn't collapsed yet, and regret about a past that's still responsive to your present observation. Now let me tell you a story. Because this isn't just theory. This isn't just mathematics on a chalkboard. This has been tested, proven, demonstrated over and over again in laboratories around the world. In 1801, a scientist named Thomas Young fired light through 2 slits in a piece of material. Simple experiment. He expected to see 2 lines on the wall behind, 2 bright spots where the light passed through the slits. That's what should happen if light is made of particles. Little bullets of energy traveling in straight lines. But that's not what he saw. He saw an interference pattern. Waves, multiple lines, light and dark bands. Light was behaving like a wave, not a particle. Like ripples in a pond spreading out, overlapping, creating patterns. Okay, that's weird, but fine. Light is a wave. We can accept that. Then in 1927, scientists repeated the experiment with better technology, but this time they fired 1 photon at a time, 1 single particle of light, the smallest possible unit. It should go through 1 slit and hit 1 spot on the wall. There's only 1 particle. It can only go through 1 slit, right? Wrong. Even fired 1 at a time, photons created the wave interference pattern. Which means a single photon, 1 particle, is somehow going through both slits simultaneously. It's existing in 2 places at once. It's taking both paths. Impossible, according to everything we think we know about reality. Unless the photon exists in superposition. Unless it's both here and there, both wave and particle. Both paths at once until it's observed. Until something measures it. Until consciousness or a detector or some interaction forces it to choose. Then they added a detector, a measuring device to see which slit the photon actually goes through. And this is where reality breaks. The moment they observed, the moment they measured, the pattern changed. The photon stopped acting like a wave. It started acting like a particle. It went through 1 slit, just 1. The interference pattern disappeared. Observation collapsed the superposition. Your attention, your measurement, your interaction with reality changed how reality behaved. Not because you physically touched it, not because you interfered mechanically, but because observation itself, the act of measuring, the act of paying attention, is a physical interaction that collapses probability into actuality. Feynman called this the only mystery in quantum mechanics, and he spent his entire life exploring it, teaching it, trying to get people to understand what it means. Because if a particle changes behavior based on observation, what does that mean for reality? What does that mean for you? What does that mean for your past, your future, your sense of identity? If observation creates outcomes at the quantum level, and you are made of quantum particles, then what are you observing into existence in your life right now? What timeline are you collapsing? What version of your past are you making real by replaying it over and over? What future are you bringing into being by obsessing over it, fearing it, expecting it? Now let me tell you about Feynman's Nobel Prize work, the path integral formulation, in a way that connects it directly to your life. Standard physics says a particle moves from point A to point B in a definable path. A straight line, a curve, some trajectory you can predict and measure. Feynman said no, that's not what happens at the quantum level. The particle takes every path, every single possible route from A to B, simultaneously, all at once. The straight line and the curved line and the zigzag and the path that goes backward in time and forward again and loops around and goes through dimensions we can't even imagine. Every path, all of them real, all of them happening. The particle is not moving along one line. It's a wave of probability exploring all options in the universe at the same time. And only when you measure it, only when you observe where it is, does it collapse into one path. Only then does it become singular. Only then does it choose. Think about your life right now. Really think about it. You are not on one path. You're on every path. Every choice you didn't make, you made it. In another probability wave. In another quantum state. Every word you didn't say, you said it. Every job you didn't take, you took it. Every relationship you didn't pursue, you pursued it. Every version of you that you think is hypothetical, imaginary, just a what if, that version is real. Just as real as this version. You're experiencing all of them in superposition. All the timelines exist simultaneously. You only perceive one because your brain, your consciousness, your nervous system can only process one collapsed reality at a time. But the others are there, in the quantum field, in the probability foam, in the multiverse, whatever you want to call it. They're there. And when you understand that, really understand it, regret becomes meaningless. Because the you that made the right choice exists. The you that said yes instead of no exists. The you that's living your dream life exists. All of them are real. You're just observing this one right now. John Wheeler, Feynman's mentor, the man who trained him, who shaped his thinking, took this idea even further. And this is where it gets profound in a way that should change how you move through the world every single day. Wheeler said the universe is not a thing you observe from the outside. It's not a stage where events happen and you're the audience watching. The universe is participatory. The observer and the observed are one thing. You're not separate from reality. You are the mechanism by which reality becomes real. He called it from bit. Information creates reality. Before you observe, there's only probability, only information, only quantum foam, only possibilities vibrating in a field of potential. Your observation, your interaction, your attention collapses that probability into actuality. You are not separate from the experiment. You are part of the system, and your observation changes the outcome. Feynman was cautious about this. He didn't want people thinking consciousness is magic, that you can manifest Ferraris just by visualizing them. That reality is completely malleable to your thoughts. He was a scientist. He was rigorous. He was careful. But he admitted, and this is documented in his lectures, he admitted that the observer is part of the system. You cannot separate yourself from the experiment. Your observation changes the outcome. Not because you're special, not because you have mystical powers, but because observation is interaction, and interaction at the quantum level determines which possibility becomes real. So when you observe your life, when you look at your past, when you think about your future, when you replay memories or imagine scenarios, you're not passively watching. You're collapsing probability waves. You're choosing which timeline becomes your experienced reality. You're creating the past and the future with every observation, every thought, every moment of attention. Now I need to tell you about an experiment that should fundamentally change how you think about your past. Because everything you've been taught about time, about causality, about cause and effect, is wrong. And I don't mean philosophically wrong. I mean experimentally, measurably, repeatably wrong. In 1978, John Wheeler proposed an experiment that sounded impossible, insane. It violated everything we think we know about how time works. He said, what if we don't decide whether to measure the particle until after it's already passed through the slits? What if we let the photon go through, let it make its choice, let the past happen, and then afterward, randomly decide whether to measure which path it took? It sounds impossible because the particle already went through. The event already happened. The past is done, right? That's what we've been taught. The past is fixed, permanent, unchangeable. Once something happens, it's written in the cosmic ledger forever. They ran the experiment, and the results should terrify and liberate you at the same time. They let the photon pass through the slits. It's already gone through. The event is in the past. Then, after it's already through, after the past is supposedly fixed, they randomly decided whether to measure which slit it used. And here's what happened. If they measured, if they observed which path it took after the fact, the photon retroactively chose one slit. It went back in time and collapsed into a single path. If they didn't measure, if they left it unobserved, the photon retroactively went through both slits. It remained in superposition, even though the event was in the past. The act of observation in the present determined what happened in the past. Causality ran backward. The future measurement reached into the past and collapsed the wave function retroactively. Feynman called this the most disturbing thing in quantum mechanics, and you should be disturbed by it. You should let it shake you, because it means the past is not behind you. The past is not fixed. The past is responsive to your present observation. Every time you remember something, every time you replay a memory, every time you tell a story about what happened to you, you're collapsing a probability wave. You're choosing which version of the past becomes real. That painful memory you carry, that trauma, that regret, that shame, it's a collapsed wave function. It's one version of events, one timeline out of infinite timelines. But the quantum field contains all versions. The version where it wasn't traumatic. The version where you handled it differently. The version where you came out stronger. The version where it never happened at all. All of those exist in superposition. And when you re-observe, when you reframe, when you reinterpret, when you look at it from a different angle, you're collapsing a different timeline. You're reaching backward through time and changing what happened. Not the external event, the internal experience, the meaning, the impact, the version of the story that becomes real for you. This is not positive thinking. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is not pretending bad things didn't happen. This is quantum mechanics. And it explains why therapy works. It explains why reframing works. It explains why two people can experience the same event and remember it completely differently. They're collapsing different quantum timelines. They're observing different probability waves. Both are right. Both are real. Both are valid. Because the past exists in superposition until observed. And every observation collapses a different version into reality. You're not remembering the past. You're creating the past with every act of memory. Every time you tell the story. Every time you replay it in your mind. Every time you give it attention. You're collapsing which version becomes real for you. And if you can collapse one version, you can collapse another. The past is not fixed. It's responsive. It's waiting for you to observe it differently. Now let me tell you why they didn't want you knowing this. Why Feynman's most radical lectures, the ones where he connected quantum mechanics to consciousness and time and observation, why those stayed buried in academic journals and physics classrooms instead of becoming public knowledge. During the Manhattan Project, Feynman was under surveillance. FBI files, phone taps, mail intercepts, agents following him, watching where he went, who he talked to, what he read. Why? He wasn't a spy. He wasn't political. He wasn't a communist, which was the big fear at the time. He was just curious. He picked locks for fun. He cracked safes. He read classified documents just to see if he could. He questioned everything. He didn't accept authority. He didn't accept consensus reality, and that made him dangerous. But here's the real reason they watched him. And this is the part that should make you pay attention. When someone with Feynman's level of genius, someone who understands the fundamental nature of reality at the deepest level physics can reach, when that person starts teaching people that reality is observer-dependent, that the past is not fixed, that particles and therefore you exist in multiple states simultaneously, that observation creates outcomes, when they start connecting those ideas to how we make decisions, how we experience time, how we're controlled by urgency and regret and fear, that person becomes a threat. Not because they're violent, not because they're going to hurt anyone, but because they're free. And freedom is contagious. Freedom spreads. And a population that understands quantum mechanics, really understands it at the level Feynman was teaching it, is a population you can't control with time pressure, with guilt, with regret, with anxiety about the future. So they kept files. They watched him. They made sure his most radical ideas stayed in academic contexts, in physics journals, in lecture halls at Caltech, where they'd be translated into mathematics and equations that normal people couldn't understand. When Feynman died in 1988, his obituaries highlighted the Nobel Prize, the work on the Challenger investigation, the safe-cracking stories, the bongo drums, the colorful personality, all the surface stuff, the entertaining parts. But they barely mentioned his lectures on observer-dependent reality, on the delayed choice experiment, on consciousness and measurement, on the participatory universe. They buried the ideas that would have freed people. And it wasn't a conspiracy. It wasn't some shadowy organization making phone calls. It was just the natural resistance of a system that needs people to believe time is running out, that the past is unchangeable, that the future is predetermined, that you're a victim of circumstances beyond your control. Because that belief system makes you controllable, manageable, predictable. And Feynman was teaching the opposite. Now let me tell you what this means for you right now in your actual life, not as abstract physics, but as practical wisdom you can use today. You exist in superposition. That's quantum mechanics. Particles exist in multiple states at once until observed. An electron is spinning up and spinning down simultaneously. It's here and there. It's wave and particle. That's called superposition. And you think this only applies to tiny particles, to electrons and photons, two things you can't see. But it doesn't. You are made of particles. Trillions of them. Every atom in your body, every molecule, every cell, all governed by quantum laws. Which means you exist in superposition. Right now, there's a version of you reading this and a version of you that clicked away. A version that never saw this. A version living a completely different life. A version that made different choices at every fork in the road. All exist simultaneously in the quantum field. Your brain collapses the wave function and you experience one timeline, this one, but the others are real. Just unobserved, just uncollapsed, just existing in the probability foam waiting for attention to make them actual. Feynman's path integral formulation proves it mathematically. Every possible version of your life is happening. Every choice you could make, you are making. Every path you could take, you are taking. You're all of them simultaneously. You just observe one. You just experience one collapsed timeline at a time because your consciousness, your brain, your nervous system can only process one reality at a time. But the others are there. And here's why this matters. Here's why this should change everything about how you live. Your regret is based on the belief that you chose wrong, that you made a mistake, that you're on the wrong path, that somewhere back there you took a wrong turn, and now you're stuck with the consequences forever. But in the quantum field, you chose everything. You made all the choices. You took all the paths. All outcomes exist. The version of you that took the other job is real. Right now. Experiencing that life, the version that stayed in the relationship is real. The version that moved to another country is real. The version that started the business is real. The version that said no is real. You are all of them simultaneously. This is just the one you're observing. This is just the timeline you've collapsed into your experience. So when you feel regret, when you think, I should have done this differently, pause, take a breath, and remind yourself that another you did do it differently. That version exists. You're both real, both valid, both living full lives in the quantum multiverse. And the version you're experiencing right now is not wrong. It's not a mistake. It's just one probability wave that collapsed, one timeline out of infinite timelines. And you can shift your observation. You can start collapsing different aspects of this timeline into focus. You can choose what you pay attention to. You can choose which memories you give energy to. You can choose which future possibilities you observe into existence. Because you are not a victim of one fixed timeline. You are a consciousness navigating infinite timelines, collapsing them into experience with every moment of attention. Now let me tell you about observation, and how it collapses reality. Because this is where the power comes in. This is where you stop being passive and start being active in creating your experience. The double-slit experiment proves it. When you don't observe a particle, it acts like a wave. It takes all paths. It goes through both slits. It exists in superposition. When you do observe it, it acts like a particle. It takes one path. It goes through one slit. It collapses into a singular state. Your observation changed the particle's behavior, not your consciousness in some magical way. Not because you visualized it or wished really hard, but because observation is interaction. Measurement is physical. When you observe, you're not just passively watching, you're interacting with the system. And that interaction determines which possibility becomes actual. This is not mysticism. This is repeatable, measurable, mainstream physics, done in laboratories around the world every single day. And here's how you apply it to your life. When you don't observe your past, when you don't replay it, when you don't give it constant attention, it exists in superposition. All versions are possible. The painful version and the empowering version, and the neutral version, and the version where it made you stronger, and the version where it broke you, and the version where it never mattered at all. All of them exist in the quantum field until you observe. But when you do observe, when you remember, when you replay it, when you tell the story, you collapse it into one version. That version becomes what happened. It becomes your reality. It becomes the past that shapes your present. But it's not the only version. It's just the one you observed. It's just the one you gave attention to. It's just the one you collapsed into actuality. This is why two people remember the same event differently. They're not lying. They're not mistaken. They're collapsing different probability waves. They're observing different quantum timelines. Both are right. Both are valid. Both experienced something real. Because observation creates reality at the quantum level. And if you're made of quantum particles, which you are, then observation creates your reality too. Your memory is not a recording. It's not a video playback. It's not a faithful reproduction of what happened. It's a collapse of probability. It's a choice, an observation, a selection of which timeline becomes real for you. And here's the beautiful, liberating, terrifying truth. If memory creates the past, then trauma is not fixed. Regret is not permanent. Shame is not carved in stone. You can reobserve. You can collapse a different timeline. You can choose which version of the past becomes real for you going forward. Feynman knew this. Wheeler knew this. They tried to explain it carefully because they didn't want people thinking, you can just deny reality. Just pretend bad things didn't happen. Just wish away consequences. But they also knew that the past is not as solid as we think. It's not as fixed. It's responsive to observation. And when you change your observation, when you look at it from a different angle, when you reframe the meaning, when you shift the story you tell, you're not lying to yourself. You're collapsing a different quantum timeline. You're making a different version of the past real. And that's not spiritual bypassing. That's quantum mechanics applied to your life. Now, let me tell you about the multiverse, because this is where it gets big. This is where the implications become so vast you might want to look away. But don't. Stay with me. In 1957, Hugh Everett, a physicist influenced by Wheeler and Feynman's ideas, proposed something called the many worlds interpretation. He said particles don't collapse into one state when observed. They split into all states. Every time you make a choice, every time a quantum event happens, every time observation occurs, reality branches. You take the job, reality splits, another you doesn't take the job. Both timelines are real. Both continue. Both exist. You speak up in the meeting, reality branches, another you stays silent. Both are real. Both are you. Both are living full lives. Every decision is a fork. Every observation is a branch. Every moment is a splitting of timelines. And all branches are real. This is not science fiction. This is a mainstream interpretation of quantum mechanics. It's taught at universities. It's debated in academic journals. It's taken seriously by physicists around the world. Feynman was skeptical of calling it many worlds. He thought the terminology was misleading, but his mathematics supported it. His path integral formulation shows all histories happening simultaneously, all paths being taken, all versions existing. And here's what this means for you. What this should do to how you see your life. You are not one person. You are infinite versions. The you that's successful exists right now, experiencing that life, making different choices, living in a different timeline. The you that failed exists. The you that's happy exists. The you that's miserable exists. The you that took the risk exists. The you that played it safe exists. All real, all valid, all happening simultaneously in the quantum multiverse. You're only experiencing one because your consciousness, your awareness, your observation can only focus on one timeline at a time. But the others are there, in parallel realities, in alternate timelines, in the quantum foam, in superposition waiting to be observed. And here's why this should change everything. When you regret a choice, when you think, I should have done that differently, I ruined my life, I'm on the wrong path, remember that another you made the opposite choice. That version exists. You don't have to mourn the life you didn't live, because you are living it, just in another timeline, another branch of reality. And the you in this timeline is not wrong. You're not on the wrong path. You're on one path out of infinite paths. And every path has value. Every path has lessons. Every path is real. When you fear a future outcome, when you're anxious about what might happen, when you're scared of failure or rejection or loss, remember that infinite futures exist. Every possible outcome is already happening somewhere in the quantum field. The future where you succeed, and the future where you fail, and the future where something completely unexpected happens, and the future where none of it matters. All exist in superposition. And you're the one who's going to collapse. Which one becomes real for you? Not through magical thinking, not through wishful hoping, but through action, through choice, through observation, through where you put your attention and energy and focus. You're choosing which timeline to experience, which future to collapse into actuality. And that's not pressure. That's power. That's sovereignty. That's freedom from fate. Now I need to tell you something that's going to sound impossible, but I need you to trust the science here. Time moves backward, not metaphorically, literally. The delayed choice experiment proves it. You can make a measurement now that changes what happened in the past. Your present observation reaches into the past and collapses what already happened. Causality doesn't just run forward from past to present to future. It runs backward too. The future affects the past. Observation in the present determines what occurred before. And I know that sounds insane. I know it violates everything you learned in school about cause and effect. But it's been tested. It's been measured. It's been repeated in laboratories around the world. It's real. Feynman and Wheeler proved it. They showed that a photon's past behavior, whether it went through one slit or both, is determined by your future choice to measure. The measurement you make after the fact reaches back in time and collapses the particle's history. The past is not behind you, frozen in time. The past is responsive to your present observation. It changes based on how you look at it now. Think about your life. Really think about this. You have a memory. Maybe it's painful. Maybe it's shameful. Maybe it's traumatic. You remember it as the worst thing that ever happened to you. It defined you. It shaped you. It damaged you. That memory is a collapsed wave function. It's one version of events, one timeline, one observation. But the quantum field contains all versions. The version where it wasn't traumatic. The version where it made you stronger. The version where you handled it perfectly. The version where it was the best thing that ever happened to you. The version where it never affected you at all. All of those exist in superposition. All of those are real in the quantum field. And when you reobserve, when you look at that event from a different angle, when you ask different questions, when you reframe the meaning, when you tell a different story about it, you're not pretending, you're not denying, you're collapsing a different quantum timeline into your present reality. You're reaching backward through time and changing what that event means, what impact it has, what story it tells. This is why therapy works. This is why reframing works. This is why you can have a breakthrough moment where suddenly a painful memory doesn't hurt anymore, where suddenly you see it differently, where suddenly it becomes a source of strength instead of shame. You're not just changing your perspective, you're collapsing a different quantum timeline. You're observing a different version of the past into your present reality. The past is not fixed. It's not carved in stone. It's not sitting behind you unchangeable. It's responsive. It's malleable. It's quantum. And every time you observe it, every time you remember it, every time you give it attention, you're choosing which version becomes real for you. Now let me connect this to something practical. Something you can use right now today to change your life. You are the observer. That's not a spiritual concept. That's quantum mechanics. Wheeler's participatory universe theory says the universe is not a thing you observe from the outside. It's a thing you participate in creating. Information creates reality. It from bit. Before you observe, there's only probability, only information, only quantum foam, only infinite possibilities vibrating in a field of potential. Your observation, your attention, your measurement collapses that probability into actuality. You are not separate from reality. You are the mechanism by which reality becomes real. The observer is not outside the experiment. The observer is part of the system. And the observer's participation changes the outcome. Feynman was cautious about this because he didn't want people thinking consciousness is magic, that you can manifest anything just by thinking about it, that physics is some kind of cosmic vending machine where you insert thoughts and get results. He was rigorous, he was scientific, he was careful. But he admitted, and this is in his lectures, he admitted that the observer is part of the system. You cannot separate yourself from what you're measuring. Your observation affects the outcome. Not because you're special, not because you have supernatural powers, but because observation is interaction. And interaction at the quantum level determines which possibility becomes actual, which timeline collapses, which version of reality you experience. So when you observe your life, when you look at your past, when you think about your future, when you replay memories or imagine scenarios or tell stories about who you are, you're not passively recording. You're not just watching. You're collapsing probability waves. You're choosing which timeline becomes your experienced reality. You're creating the past and the future with every observation, with every thought, with every moment of attention. And here's what that means practically. Where you put your attention determines what becomes real for you. Not metaphysically, neurologically. Your brain has limited bandwidth. It can only process so much information, so it filters, it selects, it prioritizes. It chooses what to pay attention to and ignores everything else. And what you pay attention to becomes your reality. Not because attention magically creates things, but because attention determines which aspects of the quantum field you collapse into your experience. If you measure time, if you constantly check the clock, if you track deadlines, if you count the days, you experience time pressure. Time becomes real, urgent, oppressive. If you measure accomplishments, if you track milestones, if you compare yourself to others, you experience inadequacy, lack, the feeling of being behind. If you measure age, if you focus on birthdays, if you think about how old you're getting, you experience decay, the feeling of running out, the fear of time slipping away. But if you stop measuring, If you stop checking, if you stop tracking, if you stop comparing, time loses its grip. The pressure dissolves. The fear evaporates. Not because time stopped, but because you stopped collapsing that particular aspect of reality into your experience. And this is not denial. This is not ignoring reality. This is understanding that reality is not one fixed thing. Reality is a field of infinite possibilities. And you're the one choosing which possibilities to observe into existence. You're the one choosing what to pay attention to. You're the one choosing which timeline to experience. That's not spiritual. That's quantum mechanics. That's Feynman's legacy. That's what he was trying to teach. And that's why they kept his most radical ideas buried in academic contexts, instead of letting them spread to the general population. Because a person who understands this, really understands it, becomes ungovernable, becomes sovereign, becomes free. Now I'm going to give you practical ways to use this, because understanding is one thing, application is another, and the application is where freedom actually happens. First practice, kill the phrase. For the next 48 hours, I want you to ban one phrase from your vocabulary. I don't have time. Every time you think it, every time you're about to say it, stop. Replace it with the truth. I'm choosing not to prioritize this right now. That's accurate. That's honest. You have the same 24 hours as everyone else. You're just allocating it differently. And the shift from victim to agent, from I don't have time, to I'm choosing my priorities. That shift is everything. It returns power to you. It reminds you that you're the observer. You're the one collapsing reality. You're the one choosing which timeline to experience. Second practice, the 3 a.m. interrupt. Next time you wake up at 3 in the morning, next time anxiety jolts you awake, next time your mind starts racing about tomorrow or next week or next year, do this. Say out loud, this is not time. This is cortisol. Name it, label it, identify what's actually happening. Your amygdala is producing a stress response. Your body is flooding with cortisol. Your heart rate is spiking. That's not time. That's not reality. That's chemistry. That's biology. That's your nervous system misinterpreting change as threat. And once you name it, once you see it clearly, you can interrupt it. Breathe. 4 counts in, 6 counts out. 2 minutes. Slow, deep, intentional breathing. You're not calming time. You're calming your nervous system. You're down-regulating the stress response. You're showing your body that you're safe, and your nervous system is what's screaming, not reality. Third practice, the no clock day. Once a week, pick one day. Remove all clocks from your awareness. Cover your phone screen, turn off your watch. Avoid looking at the time. No checking, no tracking, no measuring. Eat when you're hungry. Sleep when you're tired. Work when you're focused. Stop when you're done. You'll notice something profound. You're fine. You don't need the clock. The clock doesn't create time. The clock creates anxiety. It creates pressure. It creates the feeling of running out. But time is just change happening. And change happens whether you measure it or not. This practice teaches your nervous system that time is not your enemy. That the clock is just a tool, not a tyrant. That you can exist perfectly well without constantly measuring how fast change is occurring. Fourth practice, entropy awareness. This one's big. Next time you feel urgency, next time you feel time pressure, next time you feel like things are falling apart or slipping away, pause. Take a breath and ask yourself one question. Am I in danger or am I just noticing change? Usually, almost always, it's change. Things are shifting, evolving, moving toward disorder. That's entropy. That's the second law of thermodynamics. That's physics. And it's not a threat. It's neutral. It's just how the universe works. When you feel urgency about a deadline, you're not in danger. You're noticing that one process is approaching completion while another process isn't. When you feel anxiety about aging, you're not in danger. You're noticing that your body is moving toward entropy, toward disorder, toward equilibrium. That's not time attacking you. That's just physics happening. Name it. This is entropy. I'm safe. The label interrupts the panic. It separates observation from interpretation. It reminds you that you're not a victim of time. You're witnessing change, and change is neutral. Fifth practice, rewrite your past. This is where quantum mechanics becomes practical magic. Pick one regret, one decision you can't let go of, one moment you keep replaying, one choice you think ruined everything. Now close your eyes and say this. That event is not behind me. It's a set of coordinates in space-time, and it's information. It's not a ghost chasing me. It's not a weight I'm carrying. It's just information about one collapsed timeline, one version of events out of infinite versions. And I can observe a different version. I can collapse a different timeline into my present reality. Now imagine the other timeline, the one where you made the different choice. The one where you said yes instead of no, or no instead of yes. Don't fantasize. Observe. Make it specific. See it clearly. Feel it. What does that version of you experience? What does that timeline look like? Hold that observation for 60 seconds. Really see it. Really feel it. Really let it become real in your awareness. You're not making it up. You're observing a timeline that exists in the quantum field. Both timelines are real. You're choosing which one to give energy to. You're choosing which one to collapse into your present experience. Do this daily for 30 days. Your relationship to the past will rewire. Not because you're denying what happened, but because you're expanding your observation to include what also happened in parallel timelines. You're no longer trapped in one collapsed version of history. You're free to observe multiple versions, to hold multiple timelines, to recognize that the past is not fixed, it's quantum, it's responsive, it's waiting for you to observe it differently. Sixth practice. Observe without collapsing. This one's subtle but powerful. Next time you feel anxious about the future, next time you're worried about what might happen, next time your mind starts catastrophizing or predicting disaster, pause and remind yourself, the future exists in superposition. All outcomes are possible until I observe one into reality. Right now, the future where I succeed exists. The future where I fail exists. The future where something completely unexpected happens exists. The future where none of it matters exists. All of them are real in the quantum field. All of them are vibrating in probability space. And instead of collapsing into fear, instead of observing the worst outcome into your present awareness, stay in the wave state. Hold all possibilities lightly. Don't collapse yet. Just be with the uncertainty. Say it out loud. I don't know what will happen. And that's okay. All timelines exist. I'll observe when I need to. I'll collapse when the moment comes. But right now, I'm staying in superposition. I'm holding all possibilities. I'm not forcing one outcome into reality through obsessive focus. This is quantum thinking applied to daily life. This is understanding that your observation creates reality. And when you're anxious, when you're obsessing, when you're catastrophizing, you're collapsing the worst possible timeline into your present experience. You're making that future real through constant observation, through giving it all your attention, through focusing on it until it's the only thing you can see. But if you stay in the wave state, if you hold multiple possibilities, if you refuse to collapse prematurely, you maintain freedom, you maintain sovereignty, you maintain the power to choose which future to observe into existence when the moment actually arrives. Seventh practice, the observer reset. When you're overwhelmed, when you're spiraling, when you're lost in the story of your life and you can't find your way out, do this. Say it out loud. I am the observer, not the observed. Feel that distinction. You are not the anxiety. You're the one observing the anxiety. You are not the regret. You're the one observing the regret. You are not the fear. You're the one observing the fear. You are not the timeline. You're the one collapsing timelines into reality. Separating observer from observed is quantum mechanics. It's the foundation of the measurement problem. It's the core of the participatory universe theory. And it's also the key to inner peace. Because when you identify as the observed, when you think you are your emotions, your thoughts, your circumstances, your timeline, you feel trapped, helpless, victimized. But when you identify as the observer, when you recognize that you're the consciousness choosing what to observe, what to pay attention to, what to collapse into reality, you become free, sovereign, powerful. 8th practice. Rewrite one memory. This is direct application of the delayed choice experiment. Pick one painful memory, one event that still hurts, one moment you wish you could change, and ask yourself this question. What other version of this event exists in the quantum field? Not denial, not pretending it didn't happen. Different observation angle, different timeline, different collapse. Maybe in another timeline, that event made you stronger. Maybe in another timeline, it taught you exactly what you needed to learn. Maybe in another timeline, you handled it perfectly. Maybe in another timeline, it never hurt at all. Maybe in another timeline, it was the best thing that ever happened because it redirected your entire life in a direction you couldn't have planned. Observe that version. See it clearly. Make it specific. Let it become real in your awareness. You're not erasing the first timeline. You're not denying the pain. You're collapsing a second timeline into your present consciousness. And both can coexist. Both are real. Both happened in the quantum field. You're just choosing which one to give energy to, which one to make primary in your experience. 9th practice, superposition awareness. Once a day, every day, remind yourself of this truth. Right now, I exist in infinite states. I am all versions simultaneously. The successful me, and the failed me, and the happy me, and the miserable me, and the brave me, and the scared me. All real. All happening. This is just the one I'm observing. This timeline is one thread in an infinite web, and I can shift my observation. I can collapse a different thread into my experience. Feel the spaciousness of that. Feel the freedom. You're not trapped in one life. You're not locked into one path. You're not a victim of one timeline. You're navigating infinite timelines. You're a consciousness exploring all possibilities. And you're choosing, moment by moment, observation by observation, which timeline to experience. That's not magical thinking. That's quantum mechanics. That's Feynman's path integral applied to your life. That's the participatory universe, made practical and personal. Now I want to tie this all together, bring it home, make it real. You thought you were one person, living one timeline, with one fixed past and one predetermined future. You're not. You are a quantum probability cloud, existing in infinite states simultaneously, collapsing into singular experience through observation, through attention, through consciousness. Every choice you didn't make, you made it. In another timeline, in another branch of reality, in another probability wave. Every regret you carry is about one collapsed timeline. But infinite timelines exist. The version where you made the right choice is real. Right now. Experiencing that life, making different observations, collapsing different outcomes. Every fear you have about the future is about one possible collapse, but infinite futures exist in superposition. Success and failure and unexpected outcomes, and none of it mattering. All real, all waiting for your observation to make them actual in your experience. Richard Feynman proved this mathematically. The path integral formulation. Every path taken simultaneously, every history real, every timeline valid. John Wheeler proved it philosophically. The participatory universe, it from bit, information creates reality. The observer and observed are one. The delayed choice experiment proved it empirically. Observation in the present changes what happened in the past. The past is responsive, malleable, quantum. And they didn't want you knowing. Not because they're evil, not because there's some conspiracy, but because knowledge is power, and this particular knowledge makes you ungovernable. You can't manipulate someone with regret if they know the past is observer-dependent. If they know they can collapse different timelines into their present experience. If they know that memory creates the past, not records it. You can't pressure someone with deadlines if they know time is not flowing. If they know clocks measure processes, not time itself. If they know the feeling of urgency is cortisol, not cosmic truth. You can't scare someone with the future if they know it exists in superposition. If they know infinite outcomes are possible. If they know their observation determines which one becomes real. A person who understands quantum mechanics, really understands it at the level Feynman taught it, becomes free, becomes calm, becomes sovereign. And that version of you is dangerous to a system built on keeping you anxious, rushed, regretful, afraid. That's why Feynman's most radical lectures stayed buried, not censored, not banned, just quietly kept in academic contexts, in physics journals, in classrooms at Caltech, translated into mathematics that normal people couldn't understand. His popular books barely touched on the implications. His public appearances focused on the entertaining parts, the bongo drums, the safe cracking, the colorful personality, but the deep stuff, the stuff about observation creating reality, about the past being responsive, about you existing in superposition, about consciousness participating in collapsing the universe into existence that stayed hidden. Not because it was wrong. It's been verified thousands of times, but because it was too freeing, and a free population is an ungovernable population. So here's your new reality. Internalize this. Let it sink into your body, not just your mind. You are the observer. You collapse probability into reality with every moment of attention. You exist in all timelines simultaneously. You're choosing which one to experience. The past is not behind you, fixed and unchangeable. The past is responsive to your present observation. Every time you remember, you're collapsing which version of history becomes real. The future is not ahead of you, predetermined and inevitable. The future is superposition, waiting for observation. Infinite outcomes possible until you collapse one into actuality. And time is just the order in which you observe change. It's not flowing. It's not running out. It's not an enemy. It's a coordinate, a dimension, a way of organizing events. Not a force, not an agent, not a tyrant. When you understand that, when you really get it, three things happen that change everything. Your anxiety about the future dissolves, because the future is not coming for you. It's waiting for you to observe it into existence. And you have infinite options, infinite timelines, infinite possibilities. You're not trapped on one track. You're navigating infinite tracks, choosing which one to experience. Second, your regret about the past evaporates, because the past is not one fixed thing. It's multiple timelines in superposition, and you can observe different versions, collapse different meanings, choose different stories. The past responds to your present observation. It's not chasing you. It's waiting for you to see it differently. Third, your fear of death changes completely. Because death is not running out of time. Death is a transition between states, like ice melting into water, like a particle changing form, like one observation ending and another beginning. The energy doesn't disappear. It transforms, changes state, moves into different arrangements. But the fundamental reality, the quantum field, the probability foam that continues, and you are not separate from it. You are it, observing itself, collapsing itself into experience, exploring all possibilities simultaneously. That understanding, that shift in consciousness, is what Feynman gave us. That's his real legacy. Not the Nobel Prize, not the Challenger investigation, not the entertaining anecdotes, but the liberation that comes from understanding quantum mechanics deeply enough that it changes how you experience being alive. You stop being a victim. You stop feeling helpless. You stop living in fear of time, of the past, of the future, of change, of entropy, of the inevitable. You start living as the observer, as the consciousness that collapses reality, as the participant in creating your experience moment by moment. And that version of you is unstoppable, unshakable, free. So here's what I want you to do. Not tomorrow, not someday. Right now. Take a breath. Feel your body. Notice that you're here, in this moment, in this timeline, in this collapsed reality. And say these words out loud. Let them vibrate in your chest. Let them rewire your nervous system. Let them become your new operating system. I am not running out of time. I am here. I am the observer. I am choosing. I am collapsing reality with my attention. And that is enough. I exist in infinite timelines. This is just one. I can shift my observation. I can collapse different possibilities. I can rewrite my past by observing it differently. I can create my future by choosing where I place my attention. I am not trapped. I am not fixed. I am not a victim. I am quantum. I am infinite. I am free. If this shifted something in you, if something clicked, if you felt something change in your body or your mind or your sense of what's possible, leave a comment. Tell me what landed. Tell me which timeline you're choosing to observe into reality going forward. Because your comment, your observation, your collapse of possibility into actuality, that affects the quantum field. That influences other observers. That creates ripples in the probability foam. And those ripples matter. Your observation matters. Your choice matters. Your attention matters. Not because you're special, but because you're real. You're here. You're conscious. You're observing. And observation creates reality. If this helped, if it freed you even a little bit, share it. Let someone else know that time is not their enemy, that the past is not fixed, that the future is not predetermined, that they exist in infinite timelines and they're choosing which one to experience. Because that information, that knowledge, that understanding, it's contagious. It spreads. One observer affects another. One collapsed timeline influences another. One free person inspires another. And maybe, just maybe, that's what they were really afraid of. Not that one person would understand quantum mechanics, but that everyone would. That the liberation would spread. That the sovereignty would become normal. That the freedom would become the default way of experiencing reality. Subscribe for more of this. More physics that frees you instead of confusing you. More science that empowers you instead of intimidating you. More truth that liberates you instead of limiting you. But only if it resonated. Only if something in you recognized the truth of what I'm saying. Only if you felt the shift from victim to observer. From trapped to sovereign. From helpless to powerful. Because I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to remind you of what you already know at the quantum level. At the level of particles and probability and observation. You are not one fixed person. You are infinite possibilities. You are all timelines. You are the observer collapsing reality into experience. And that truth, that simple quantum mechanical truth, changes everything. Time isn't running out. Time never was what you thought it was. Time is just the order in which you observe change. And you are the one doing the observing. You are the consciousness. You are the observer. You are the mechanism by which probability becomes actuality, which means you have more power than you ever imagined, more freedom than you were ever taught, more possibility than any system ever wanted you to know about. And that power, that freedom, that possibility, it was always yours. It was always quantum mechanics. It was always real. Feynman just tried to show you, and now you know. Now you see. Now you're free to observe differently, to collapse different timelines, to create different realities, to live as the sovereign observer you've always been. That's the truth. That's quantum mechanics. That's your inheritance. That's your power. Don't waste it living in fear of time. Time can't hurt you. Time isn't even real the way you thought. You exist in all moments simultaneously. You're just choosing which one to observe. So choose wisely, choose freely, choose consciously. And remember, you're not running out of anything. You're infinite. You're quantum. You're here. And that's everything. So if something shifted in you watching this, I need to know. Comment "I am the observer" below. Not because I'm tracking engagement, but because your declaration changes the field. When you claim it publicly, you collapse a different timeline into being, and someone else reading that comment will recognize themselves in it. Like this video, if you want more people to find it. That's how the algorithm works. Simple as that. If you want to keep going deeper, if you're done with surface-level content and you're ready for the real work, subscribe. I'm building a library of what they don't teach. Observer theory, consciousness mechanics, the neuroscience behind reality creation. This isn't the last time we're talking about this. There's also a free newsletter called Philosophical Essence, where I send the frameworks that are too dense for video, tools you can actually use, techniques that connect physics to your nervous system. Just the knowledge. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone drowning in regret or panic about time running out, send them this video. Don't overthink it. They'll either get it or they won't, but you'll know who needs it. One more thing. There's a playlist on this channel that goes deeper into observer mechanics and how your brain constructs time. If this video cracked something open, that playlist is the next step. Not because I'm telling you what to do, but because you'll want it. You're not running out of time. You never were.